All right. And for those of you, it looks like chat is disabled right now. So if you have any questions, just feel free to throw it into the Q&A. I'll try and unblock that chat, but we have that as a backup. So I think for, the sake of, timing here, I mean, I'm really excited to have Todd Humphrey on. I had reached out to Todd probably, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago, and told him a little bit about this webinar and just was really excited to kind of learn about his experience and knew he was an incredible fit to really talk about this topic that really is top of mind for my company, as well as a lot of the operators that we talk to in both the entertainment and professional sports spheres. So, Todd, I really, want to spend the majority of this time, just exploring your background and really digging into how you leverage technology and what your strategy is for intersecting that with the fan experience. So, without further ado, please introduce yourself. I know you have your name tag there, and just kind of tell us a little bit more about your story because it's quite novel and quite captivating.
Well, first of all, thanks for one reaching out, and secondly having me today. So yeah, I'm the SVP of Digital Innovation and Fan Experience for the Seattle Kraken. We are the 32nd NHL team. We're just wrapping up our third season, so I've been a part of this for about 7 years. I was on a early committee around the redevelopment of our arena. I was kind of doing volunteer work as we, pre-crack, and I joined. We were without a name, without a logo, without team colors, without a coach, a general manager, or any players. There was like literally 10 of us around a table as we thought about, launching this team. And one of the biggest questions we had was, so are people actually going to show up to hockey games in Seattle? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So I've been full-time here for 5 years, on the project for about 7, but my history going a ways back, somebody will always ask the question, so I'll get it out of the way. I'm Canadian. So when I say things like out and about or a couple of kokanee, you'll know. I grew up in Toronto. Born and raised, started skating when I was like 2 years old. So for me, this is a dream job of multiple proportions. Played hockey all the way through growing up, played college hockey in Canada for 4 years, and then played 4 years of minor pro hockey after that. So had a really, hockey infested youth and early adulthood. And then as I moved out of my playing career, I got into sort of finance meets venture capital meets technology. And it was the late 90s when literally the internet was just booming. And so I spent about 20 years starting and assisting to ultimately build technology companies, and really at the intersection of where can technology make a difference in certain industries. So I did everything from an online auction company. We did sort of a straight up e-commerce company. We did a platform company. We had a company called Kobo that competed directly with the Kindle in the ebook and the hardware space, project management software, and then most recently in the healthcare and health insurance space. So it really interesting, just looking at like where does technology have a differentiator. And so that's really, when you think about my kind of early stage career with hockey, and then my early stage startup career overlaid with technology, this role for me with the Kraken kind of has an intersection of all of those. So we're trying to be innovative. We're trying to utilize technology in multiple ways throughout our experience, which we'll talk about. But yeah, again, as a Canadian, as a hockey guy, as a startup entrepreneur, the intersection of all those things in this role has been phenomenal.
And when we were last talking, you mentioned that you were kind of employee number 8 before you had a team, before you had a brand, before you even knew what you guys were really building towards here. So when you started stepping into the role for fan experience, like how did you build that from a cold start? Because you weren't a team that had a prior home, you were an expansion team, brand new cold start. So where did you look for inspiration? How did you know what would be a captivating fan experience?
I think the simplest answer is we didn't know. The good news was we had a brand new arena that ultimately cost about $1.2 billion. We have a rabid sports fan base here in Seattle. It was a brand new sport to this city. You know, Seattle actually was the very first U.S. team to win a Stanley Cup in 1917.
Wow.
So there's hockey history. It just predates most people that live here now, or are still alive, frankly. And so with that, we had the ability, it was kind of a blank canvas. One of the things that we have the benefit of, we have a deep partnership with Amazon. Andy Jassy, who is now the CEO of Amazon, is a longtime friend of mine and a part of our ownership group. Andy and I formed a technology committee starting in 2018. So 3.5 years before we launched this team. And we really took the Amazon approach of like the customer experience backwards. And what do we want it to be? And then how do we build into that? So the most obvious one for us was, how do we get people to, from, and through the arena, and can technology be utilized there? We made the decision to become the first NHL team to build our first mobile application, to have their own, I should say. So we built our own. We could have easily ripped one off the shelf and kind of, customized it. But we built our own and really think about it from three standpoints, really two. One is ticketing, got to get people into the building. And then the second is transportation. One of the things that our ownership group did and made a commitment to, excuse me, as part of our sustainability climate pledge arena focus, is we have free public transportation for anybody coming to and from the arena. So if you have a ticket for a game, you ride for free, whether it's a train, a bus, the light rail, the monorail, a water taxi, anything at all. The challenge there was we had to integrate all those different systems, the bus, the train. Oddly, they all run on different technology platforms. We had to integrate those all together to really simplify it for the fan. So we focused a lot on sort of the tactical nature of our fan experience through the mobile app. And that's worked exceptionally well. We've layered in, you can watch, game highlights, and you get score updates and player profiles and schedules and all of that. But really, like, technology is at the core of how our fans really get to, from, and through the arena. So that was sort of our big foray. But we looked at, like, how are we going to have this sort of what we call door-to-door experience? It is like from the time the person leaves in the morning all the way through to when they get to and go to the game, all the way until they get home. What's that experience going to look like? And what are all the friction points that potentially meet in that experience? The average NHL fan, if I was to ask this group of people on this call, how much time do you think the average NHL fan spends in lineups once they get to the arena? The answer call it a 3-hour experience. The answer is 1 hour. So 1/3 of your time is spent in lines. And so we publicly declared a war on lines, and whether that was through the mobile app, that was through the design of the arena with more doors to get into and out of, or whether it was the design of our F&B and our food and beverage locations, where you don't have as much sort of belly up to the bar where you wait. This is more, grocery store style, where you can scan yourself and check yourself out. So all these different little pieces were a really critical piece to how we initially looked at the fan experience.
Got it. And I think one thing that I've observed in talking with a lot of different operators is there's always this careful balance of leveraging technology, but also having that human touch and being customer centric, and really know that you have a person as a resource there. So all of this automation sounds amazing, but also at the end of the day, a lot of people still want the human element. So how do you balance all this seamless, frictionless technology that you're getting the guest from point A to point B with someone who also wants that experience, that knows there's someone there to help them if they want that?
Well, it's a really good point, because one of the things we talked about was two things. One, let's not just use technology to use it. Like, let's use it to benefit, most importantly, to the fan. Secondly, to us, because we're going to be able to capture lots of data and understand the experience. But that allowed us, like the people that we don't have that are typically checking people out or taking payment or going to get the French fries, we now are able to redeploy those people into a full-on guest services, guest experience
Mhm.
capacity. So we're not necessarily much less staffed. We just are able to use our staff in much more of a eye to eye. How can we make this better for you? Whether it's showing you exactly where your seats are, whether we can solve a problem quicker, whether we can help you with whatever it might be. So we've really tried to take technology, leverage it to the fans' benefit, but also to ours, where we can say, okay, how do we redeploy these people and get them to actually do what they should be doing, which is guest services, and let's make it a
Mm.
really kick-ass experience for that fan.
So, and then thinking about, the technology component versus that, guest services, where would you say are the most significant advancements in using technology to automate that, where, guest service doesn't need to be there versus guest service activities that need to have the human touch? Like how, if you can dive a little bit deeper into that delineation.
Yeah, so probably the best example is food and beverage.
Okay.
So the what is referred to as the belly up to the bar, which is, let's say you see 10 people in line, right? You're like,
Hmm.
no problem, I'll hop in line. What typically happens is the same person behind the bar, behind the food and beverage stand, is taking the order, fulfilling the order, going to get the beers and the Cokes and whatever, the hot dogs, and then also taking payment. So the average transaction time for that one person in front of you is about 75 to 90 seconds. You times that by 10, you've now spent your entire intermission waiting for one person to service the entire line of only 10 people. So
Hmm.
we've approached it from two different perspectives. One, we've got more beer taps along with more toilets and urinals. As I like to say, we get it in you, we get it out of you. So all of those things matter, right? Because the less time people can spend waiting for one thing, the better. So we've got, rather than just belly up to the bar, you've got your grocery style checkout where you can self check out, pick up your stuff. The
Hmm.
other thing that we've got are four what are Amazon powered just walkout stores. So there's cameras in the ceilings. You scan in using either your credit card, where you just dip a
Hmm.
credit card, or you can use your palm, which I'll talk about. And then you walk in, whatever you pick up, put down, ultimately, whatever you walk out through the gate with, that's what you get charged with. So it's an Amazon Go, Amazon just walk out technology or experience,
Hmm.
with nobody working on the back end. So there's no cashier. We've
Hmm.
got a couple people there, one to check ID for people coming into with alcohol, secondly, just as a guest experience. But that frictionless experience of walk in, pick up, walk out. We had a headline in the paper here. It was, quote, I got my beer in 8 seconds.
Oh,
Like
wow.
magic, right? So
Yeah.
people now during a television timeout, they can go to their favorite stand that's right around the corner from their seat, walk in, get their beers, whatever it might be, and out they go.
Hmm.
So those are the little things where, it was a big investment for us to redesign some stores and to integrate this technology, but ultimately it really delivers that fan experience where it's frictionless
Hmm.
and ultimately gives a better experience, allowing us to then redeploy people outside of those stores to different areas to better serve the people one-on-one. So it's not just transactional, it's more
Hmm.
functional and providing that experience.
Hmm. And it almost sounds like what you have today is like a taste of the future, but the future is now. So with that being said, what does the future look like? So you probably are ahead of some other venues and
Yeah.
deploying some of Amazon's latest and greatest, given your proximity to Amazon and your partnership. But given where you are today, where do you see, technology plus the fan experience going in the next 5 to 10 years?
There's a lot of talk about AI and VR and AR. And I think that technology is really cool. Do I imagine where 17,000 people are going to be wearing, vision goggles and watching the game from different perspectives? I
Yeah.
really, I think one thing that we've learned coming out of COVID, and our first season, people were wearing masks, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not that far from COVID, but what we discovered is that people really want to be there. They want to be together. They want to be cheering together, celebrating together, the disappointment of losing together, all of that.
Yeah.
So I don't imagine that those technologies, I think there's some integration of those potentially. I think there's
Hmm.
really cool out of arena, out of stadium experiences. So you're at home and maybe you've got goggles and we can show you different angles through broadcasting or streaming.
Hmm.
But as we think about in arena, and we can touch on the other stuff in a moment, in arena, we've done some really unique, cool stuff that's really simple. We've got a group called Memento, and Memento has installed 8 cameras around our arena, all on the main concourse. When something exciting is about to happen and then ultimately happens, there is a trigger person, an actual human being, hits a trigger, takes between 8 and 12 pictures. It captures literally everybody in the arena. And so then people post game can go in, hey, I was in section 13, row G, seat 2, and you get all these different pictures from all these different events, ultimately about 50 pictures a game of you celebrating or high-fiving. And it's one of these really almost rudimentary, like it's a picture, it is a memento, and it just creates this really cool visual that people can then share on social or print or whatever they want to do with
Hmm.
it. But those are the sort of like fan activation things that happen that it doesn't take artificial intelligence, although there's some in their system, but it doesn't have to be this sort of splashy technology. It can really get as simple as there was a goal scored. I was celebrating with my seatmate or my wife, kids, and I get to now that's memorialized forever and I can see it. So those are,
Hmm.
I think there's some really cool tech stuff coming, but I really do think that from a fan experience standpoint, people still want to just go to the game, they want to experience it, and they want to just live it.
Wow. I mean, it almost reminds me of kind of getting the picture when you're going down the flume log ride in Disney.
100%.
Yeah. And
That's
you're
it.
celebrating that moment of like adrenaline running through you as you're having this really exciting memento of that period of time where you couldn't have captured yourself with a selfie or any other technology
And
that he
you
didn't
get
provide.
you get the most amazing reactions from people, and
Yeah.
then they get it. So, listen, I think there's things as, I don't want to say it's simple, but just more thoughtful like that. I do
Yeah.
think there's, we partner heavily with AWS, and there's a lot of data and analytics that are being pushed out to the teams. Subsequently, I think what you're seeing is those technologies. How do we get that data in unique and consumable, digestible formats for the fan?
Mm.
What does that look like when I'm sitting at home? Like, how do I see that? What's that visual look like? The fact that, Vince Dunn and our team skated 20,000 feet tonight. I don't know how to calibrate that. Oh, you're telling me he skated all the way around Bainbridge Island. Oh, that's cool. So like these different visuals and like how do you make it again more digestible for fans? I think there's
Yeah.
some stuff coming there. I do think there's some use for AR and VR and different viewpoints. And I don't know that everyone's going to have $3,000 glasses on, but how do we stream them different angles, different camera views? This is a goal.
Hmm.
This is what Philip Grubauer sees when Alexander Ovechkin has taken a frickin' slap shot on his head. Like this is how.
Yeah.
Um, so that's where I think there's some cool stuff coming, and you want to be careful, right? You want to give people enough, but you don't want to distract from what they're really wanting to do, which is watch the game. And I can imagine where there's a couple different streams. I mean, ESPN's got Monday Night Football, and then they've got the Manning cast, right? And the Manning cast is super cool and it's differentiated. Is there that for an analytics, for a technology focus? And so I think
Hmm.
there's lots of chatter around what that could look like.
And on the topic of data, I mean, I think one thing that I've talked with a lot of operators about is where does guest experience and all these investments in technology, they have to percolate down to some level of ROI. And
Yep.
so when you're pitching, we want to bring in this technology or we want to enhance this guest experience, how do you explain to those in the finance department, to those handling budgets, like what warrants this expense? Like, how do you have that conversation to know, hey, I want this tech and here's why I need it.
Yeah, listen, the ROI is harder, right? So when I think about something like Memento, okay, people are going to get pictures, they're going to love it. Okay, it's going to cost us X number of thousands of dollars per year. Part of it is just you see the engagement. Now, when we look at our Just Walk Out stores, we see the throughput, right? We can see how fast people are getting into those stores and out of those stores. If I can go and get my beer inside of a minute, what am I going to do? I'm either going to go celebrate and have a good time with my friends down in the club,
Yep.
the concourse, or maybe I'm going to the store. And so as we have integrated different technologies to accelerate the throughput, we're starting to see our per caps go up. That is, how much on a per cap basis is the average fan spending on food, on beverage, and on retail. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you look at our per caps, we're in the top 5 in the league for both those categories, F&B and retail. And I would argue, and it's impossible to say apples to apples because we've only had this technology in our building. But if you look at similar buildings, we're selling significantly more. And I think that's because people can get it faster. And then they have
Mm.
more time to either go to a different food stand or they've got time to go to a retail store. So our numbers across the board from people through to dollars spent are increased, compared to everybody else.
And is that the driving KPI? Because I mean, I assume that necessarily wouldn't be the same KPI for another type of fan technology that might be deployed. So how do you measure when something is a success? Like the per caps totally makes sense, but for things that maybe aren't that linear, how do you measure success there? And is there like a time interval that you measure it over so that you can say, hey, we're going to continue with this technology, or B, we're not going to?
It's a really good and timely question because we talk about it literally every week. So we do a post-event survey with all of our fans, not all of our fans, with a segment of our fans. So once you enter and submit a survey, you're put in quarantine for a month. So we don't ask you every single game, but you can
Mm-hmm.
be asked as many as 6 times over the year, how was your event? And we then measure it on an NPS score basis.
Mm.
We then can tweak like, oh, we just launched Memento. We can insert a question around Memento. Did that add value to your experience? What did you like about it? Would you do?
Mm-hmm.
So that, it's a little bit of quantitative versus qualitative, right? Like, what's the quality of the data from the NPS scores?
Mm-hmm.
Subsequently, what are the comments around that? And what's the social chatter around it? And what are we frankly just talk to a lot of our fans. Like, what are they saying about it?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it's a little bit of like, how's the wind blowing and did we see value there? But for the most part, our fans tell us what they like and especially what they don't.
Yes.
We just listen really closely and we do a lot of talking and listening to our fans.
And does that tie into, in terms of season ticket holder retention, like how do you kind of factor in NPS scores versus per cap spend? And then, we've talked about renewals. Like where does renewals for season ticket holders factor into all this?
It's huge. We don't control what happens on the ice. We can only
Mhm.
control, that's certainly a segment of it. If you go 0-82, you're probably gonna have a hard time renewing. Thankfully, we're in a decent spot, right? Like we're a competitive, hardworking team. So put the on ice product aside. How does the overall experience capture our fans? And is that door-to-door experience. Like, are we allowing it to be an easy place to come to? One, get into, two, experience, three, and then four, get home from. I'll give you a really simple example. Most arenas, when you leave them, it is hard, right? You get in your car, you're red light, red light, red light. It's slow getting out of there for whatever reason. We worked with the city. We put together an extensive transportation plan. We block and tackle this thing. When you're leaving our arena, for the first four blocks, there are police there and they're directing traffic. And the other thing that's happening, the lights are all green. So they'll change
Mm.
every 4 or 5 minutes, on the cross section, but for the most part, they're going this direction. So, what used to take me from this same arena before the renovation used to take 45 minutes to get home. I'm home in less than 20 minutes now. And so that's just kind of block and tackle. It's not technology, but it's innovation because the strategy around like what do people want? they want a great experience, and then when the experience is over, they want to get home. And so we help them do all of that. And I think just the how do you be thoughtful? Because if someone's coming to 41 hockey games a year or 20,
Mm,
or even 10, right? If you're coming to 10 games a year, you're coming to 2 games a month every 2 weeks. So we're asking a lot
mhm.
of you as a fan, how do we make that simple and take away that friction?
Got it. Got it. So we only have a couple minutes left here. I'm just going to run to the Q&A really quickly. It looks like I answered one of those questions in the ROI, but the second question was, as you see more technology deployed throughout the venue, does that mean you're hiring more IT staff to support all those systems? Like, how does that staffing and workforce optimization work?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely got a healthy IT department. Like I've got a mobile app team that is, a handful of people. We've got an
Mhm.
IT group that handles our training center where I am now and our team experience. So there is a support system for sure. If things break, someone's got to be there. So we've got, lots of people on call during games, lots of people that are
Mhm.
focused on allowing, those fans to have an experience. If something goes down, if the Ticketmaster API into the app isn't working, boom, we've got a problem because people can't get in the building. So
Yeah.
we're definitely on call and ready. So yeah, there's a staff behind. Like innovation, as we all know, doesn't just happen as people
Mhm.
get built or as it gets built. It also doesn't just happen when things break. So we're very much staff friendly, I would say, in terms of being, ready and on call.
That's fantastic. And then it looks like we have time for one more question. And it says, as you mentioned toilets earlier, are there any solutions that you see to reduce these lines? This is a real friction point in large venues. So you talked about adding more, but is there any other secret sauce to it?
It's really hard, right? Like toilet urinals, like I never thought I would spend time with the CEO of Amazon, like literally doing math around like what is the average visit for a woman versus a man when they go to the restroom? Like we did this on a whiteboard. Like it was an amazing conversation. And then how many do we need? Um, there's always going to be lines, especially when, baseball is easier because you've got 9 innings, right? So
Hmm.
people come and go. And in hockey, you've got two intermissions. And so people don't want to miss any of the games. So they all slam into the restroom in that intermission. One very simple thing we did was the W's and the M's for women's and men's restrooms, those are able to be turned. And so if it's a female front concert, for instance, or we're recognizing that, hey, it's women's night, we're going to have more, like, we'll flip some of them, not all of
Oh,
them.
wow.
Like, that's just a very simple, it's like the traffic lights, right? Like, just if
Oh
it
my
is going to be 80%, I took my daughter to One Direction years ago. I think I was one of four guys in the building. So there was
God.
men's room, but the women's room was jammed. So we've just got the ability to flip those so women can use the men's restroom if in fact it's that kind of concert. So put in more toilets, more beer taps per capita than any other arena or stadium. So that helps. But still, there's backups in part because you're slammed. We've tried to train people to go during TV timeouts and otherwise, but people still, they don't want to miss the game. So they really focus in on that 18-minute intermission. So it's uh,
Wow.
it's an ongoing conversation and we'd love to support, but we've done our best so far.
And the shameless question here is, can technology play a role in that?
You
Because your
know,
solution was analog, which makes total sense. But is there a technological solution for this very real in-person problem?
so we've thought about, and there are arenas that have, wait times at particular restrooms. The reality is people you have a hard time moving people to say, hey, listen,
Mhm.
you really should go to the bathroom now. What we people they want to go when they want to go. They want to
Yeah.
go to where they want to go. So we haven't done the wait times here versus over here. At this moment, I don't think technology plays a role for us at least. But it's, something we'd look at if you did. If you got a solution, let us know.
And I will be sure to update you if we get an answer to that question. But we're right at time. Todd, I really, really enjoyed this. Really a lot of key takeaways to pull that from there. And I'm hoping that everyone attendance could extract as much value as I've extracted from this. So really appreciate the time and thanks for, chatting with me about all these different technology and fan experience related challenges and accomplishments.
Happy to do it, and nice to chat to you and your group, and welcome any further conversation.
Awesome. All right. Thanks everyone for joining. Well, this is a number of webinars that we're going to be doing over the next couple months. So if you know anyone that wasn't able to join today, we'll be sure to be sending out additional invites with really talented operators like Todd. So thanks everyone.
Thanks all.
Take care.